Hello and welcome back to the Daily Pilgrim channel. This is the next episode of the Nostalgic podcast, episode 5. And in this episode, and again, as always, it was a long time ago, things were very different then, I was trying to go out to try and get some footage. I was really trying to kickstart the channel and the podcast. And so everything was about those early lessons. Now, one lesson that I learned very quickly is that if you are in the back of your camper van on a very wet day and you put the heating on, you create quite a lot of steam. And so if you are parked in an abandoned car park, and a police officer comes knocking at the door because your windows are steamed up, he might think you're up to something. And so certainly when you open the door and you say, "Good evening, officer, look at my huge camera lens." I didn't actually say that, but as the door opened and the police officer looked, he said, "Well, of all the things I thought you were doing, that wasn't it." So it's for nostalgia. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome once again to the Daily Pilgrim podcast with me, your host, Alex. I'd like to welcome you back, and once again, I'm in the cupboard under the stairs. It is quite nice in here, and certainly in the winter, it's really, really cozy, snug and warm. Unfortunately, in the summer, it's really, really cozy, snug and warm. That having been said, it is still my cupboard under the stairs, and as we're back, let's get on with the show. Now, as we begin, I need to make an apology to you all. Last week, I think it's fair to say I was the most miserable so-and-so on the face of the planet. I got the job done. The podcast, I thought, was okay. And a few people said, good episode. Well, all right, one person said good episode, but lots of people downloaded it. Wasn't that great? But I was very conscious I started moaning about drinks in Subway. So I'm sorry for that. Funny things did happen to me this week, you'll be delighted to know, which I'm going to say for the end. But they were in very, very good taste and very good humour. So we begin with the story of odd socks. This week demonstrated once again that I will do almost anything. And in particular, I would just add, if people ask me for, say reasons that they're a bereaved family and I'm doing a funeral service for them, and they ask me to wear odd socks, because it was particularly irritating to the poor lady that had passed away. Now, it was in very, very good humour, and the family, it was a big standing joke, and the whole room, everybody was wearing odd socks, including the funeral director, the bearers, and every single member of the family. Oh, and congregation full stop, really. However, it was a good job that I remembered to change out of the odd socks, well, one of them anyway, because I did have a meeting to go to afterwards, and it would have been quite a thing to have explained to somebody why I was wearing one black sock and one bright red one, complete with spaceships. Not the most professional thing in the world if it wasn't requested. Now, it has been an incredibly busy week. Yes, I've had enjoyable things to do, looking after funeral families, and we've been looking after some clinic patients as well, but there have been other things that haven't been quite so enjoyable or rewarding. Admin, phone calls, emails, sorting bits and pieces out, and another new tyre for the camper van. Now, I really, really was a bit upset about this, because just last week I had a puncture, and I think I waxed lyrical on the last podcast, saying about how I'd been let down by one tyre company and another one had come along to my rescue, and weren't they lovely? Well, when I phoned that tyre company again this week, the second one I hasten to add, they said, "Oh, hello, has something gone wrong with your tyre?" No, not that one. The one you fitted was great, lovely, and it still works perfectly. It's just the one opposite. And he said, what happened? and it was another puncture. However, today saw them come and fix that one. £120 lighter again, but it's okay. I'm not sore. I will say, in all seriousness, they did a very good job. Once again, they came, they fixed the issue, and got me back on the road, so I can't argue with that. However, we discovered that there was, in fact, a spare wheel on the car. So when I had the puncture the other day, I decided that we would put the space saver on the car. Now, I have changed wheels over the years, and I won't pretend that it's an easy 2-minute job, but it's never taken me an hour and a half before. And that was an hour and a half from when I actually had the tools to do the job with. You see, the jack and the wheel brace didn't fit the car, and they were actually the standard manufacturer's fitted ones, but they didn't fit the car. Now, this would have been incredibly useful if you happened to be passing someone that had broken down and you stopped and said, "Oh, it's all right, I've got a jack and a wheel brace. They don't fit my car. Maybe I could give them to you." And maybe it was that bon ami that designed, or should I say, led the designers to put that particular thing in the car. Now, you may remember that I went on a famous trip to Wales, and I did lots and lots of video footage. That brings me to my sort of message for this week. Never give up, but maybe reevaluate what you're doing. Now, it might be that you just need an extra push. It might be that your idea, whatever you're doing, is a good and brilliant one, and you just need a little more motivation. Try again. Practice makes perfect. You only fail when you give in, etc. But there are some ideas that are, I'm afraid to say, so blasted stupid that you must have been drunk or stoned or both, or at least on another planet when you came up with them. Some of these ideas I have done over the years. I will say, however, that the Wales trip was a fantastic time. I had a wonderful, wonderful trip. It was brilliant. However, did I harvest some good video footage to make a nice story-based video out of for my YouTube channel? No, not even slightly. It was quite a collection of musings, but none of them made sense in a story. I took, and I kid you not, 400 gigabytes of video footage. I condensed that down to about a half an hour, and then I went back to try and start fiddling with the half an hour video, and I ended up cutting it down to about 6 minutes, and even then it wasn't a story. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to put a little montage together of some of the scenes and the bits that I saw. I'm afraid that's going to have to do for this one. I've been trying so hard for so long to put this blasted video together for the Wales trip. I'm afraid I have decided that with the footage I've got, it's never going to be what I want, so it gives me a lovely excuse to do it all over again. Some of the more stupid things that I've done involved a lot of the part-time jobs that I did, particularly when I was studying and at university. I was often promised night portering jobs, where I wouldn't have to work all night, and instead would be paid to, basically sit in the office and study or go to sleep. They never ever worked out quite like that, but it didn't matter, because when one failed, I'd apply for another one. And the same thing would happen. And you would think I would have learnt my lesson. But this went on for years and years, and it was only when I finally qualified and didn't have to go down that route anymore, it was only then that I actually realised, you know what? If somebody pays you to work for 8 hours, they're not going to be very happy for you to sleep for 6.5 of it. Now, I think this is a bit unreasonable, personally. I think that, they should want more people to sleep whilst on duty, but apparently they don't. That having been said, it's been a very interesting week for other reasons too. I finally put the car on the market for sale, and I thought the description that I put was very, very good. I began by describing the car, the life it's had, and what I'd paid for it. And then I went on to say what I was looking for it. And I put a little addendum at the bottom, and I don't know if this was necessary, but I also don't know if this has attracted the most people. I'll tell you just how many have responded to the advert in one moment, But first, I would just like to say that the advert itself was very, very well written. The bottom section said something along the following lines. And I say something along the following lines because I can't bring my phone in the sound booth, so I can't read what I actually put. I put something along the lines of, "This vehicle is what it is. Please don't phone me or text me or message me asking if I'm taking a lower amount, because the answer will be no. I very well may take an offer, but make sure you're standing next to the car, having viewed it before you do this. I don't want to waste my time or yours. And sadly, over the years, too many people have sent me a message saying, 'Will you accept a lower amount?' I've said yes. They've come, they've kicked the tyres, and they've negotiated from this new figure." Now, maybe that was quite a lot to put in the advert. Maybe it was giving the very clear message, don't mess with me. Don't attempt to negotiate where I'm concerned. But maybe that's frightened some people off, because the grand total of inquiries I've had, none. The grand total of people that responded to my advert, none. The grand total of people that read the advert and may very well have responded, 243. I wonder if perhaps I was a bit strong. Now, going back to the second tyre on the camper, that was a right pain in the what's-it. Yes, it was a bit of a fiddle, but I also missed out on the opportunity to go down and see Beth. I was really looking forward to doing that. I'd even loaded the camper with all those useful things. I mean, my camera crane, for example, is in the van as we speak. I was going to take that down to show Beth. She would have been interested, or at least would have had the decency to pretend she was being interested. And she would have been the first one. But sadly, not to be. Speaking of my camera crane, I have to say it's the most expensive and useless piece of equipment that I've ever bought. It works and it's very fit for purpose. It does exactly what it's advertised to do, and actually it works really, really well. But I realised that doing vlogging, you don't have that much call for an elevating camera crane stroke jib that pivots round and gets various different angles. But it's retail therapy, isn't it? I mean, let's face it, the quality of my content will be improved no end if I buy more equipment. Just this afternoon, I was thinking about buying another microphone. I mean, I've only got 2 in the studio, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 camera ones, and a couple of spare ones as well. But if I bought another one, wouldn't that be good? Or maybe not. On a very serious note, I'm trying to get the numbers up now. I'm delighted that I reached a certain milestone with downloads, and it's wonderful. I stuck my head above the parapet and I advertised my Patreon account to people as well. I really, really am enjoying doing this, and I want to do even more. So please, if you're listening and enjoying, why not share it with friends? Yes, I'm sure you will keep them as a result, but share it with friends, and if you feel that you'd like to go over to the Patreon page, all on dailypilgrim.com as always, but you can go over to the Patreon page and, maybe pledge a £5 or something like that. It all helps for the cost of extra microphones, which I don't need but want, and more serious things like the actual hosting of this podcast, which does cost a fair few quid a month. But if you'd like to contribute, you're very welcome. If you want to keep listening for free, then please do, because I really, really, I need listeners. I'm not afraid to say it. I need people to come and join and spread the word. So that is really, really valuable too. So please, please do, and thank you very much. Now, in the past, I've talked about going to Barbary Castle as a particularly good and favourite place of mine. A place where I've done much contemplation and wanted to do important and impressive videos. Well, I went to the other end of the Ridgeway this week, Ivinghoe Beacon. This is the end, assuming that Barbary Castle's the beginning, the end of the Ridgeway, and I was absolutely delighted to take all my camera equipment and set up to do this wonderful inspirational video. Now, before I begin to tell you the story, I will just explain that it's only me these things happen to. I'm sure they don't happen to anybody else. Nobody else could possibly be this unlucky. Because, yes, you've guessed it, a funny thing did happen to me. I'll share it. I drove all the way to Ivinghoe Beacon, and it was without event. I arrived, I went to the far side of the car park, and I thought, well, I'll just go on my own because I'm going to be setting up cameras and talking to myself, and, I don't want people to think that I'm too strange. So I went and got all set up and ready, and the skies absolutely opened. And this isn't the good bit of the story. I very quickly, and getting wet, threw the camera stuff, well, not through, but put the camera stuff quite quickly into the back of the car, scrabbled in myself, and at that point, with the doors closed, I was absolutely soaking wet, so was all the camera equipment. I got a towel out, started drying everything, hanging my clothes up around the back of the camper, etc., etc., and it very, very quickly, the camper steamed up. Now, the camper has tinted windows in the back, but you can still sort of see through. In addition, the windows were steamed up. So, to an outsider, it may have looked like I was up to something in the back of the camper van. Add to that the fact that I was sat quite sort of in a led-down position almost, because I'd sort of stripped off my shoes and socks and what have you, and my jacket and my jumper, and spread those around. But I also had the bedding in there from the last trip, so I sort of propped my backside up on the bedding, and I was almost not quite led down, but I certainly didn't look as if I was just sat on a seat. Now, to any passerby, they may have thought, we know what he's doing in there. Wonder if he's on his own or if he's with somebody else. But either way, good on him. Yes, I'm sure people would have thought that, including these particular two gentlemen. They had a white car with blue stripes on it, or blue checkered bits on it. And they pulled up, just slightly off-centre to the camper, and proceeded to stare. I thought, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm going to sit here. And they sat and they looked. Now, I don't know if they were expecting me to clock their presence, assuming I had somebody in the back or was having fun in other ways. I'm not sure if they thought, well, I was going to clock their presence and then basically redress myself or whatever I may have been up to, and they could have caught me in the act of that. No, they waited for a few moments, and then I did have to move, to be honest, because I was getting a bit uncomfortable. Across the constable came. And he knocked, as only a police constable can, on the window in a way that says, "Evening, Sonny. Open the door, please. What's going on here, then?" He didn't say any of those things. He didn't need to. Maybe he wasn't thinking those things, but I was thinking them, so that's what he was thinking. As the door opened, I've never seen such an expression on a policeman's face before. I don't know what he thought he was expecting to see. Actually, I do. I know exactly what he was expecting to see. And there was a large, protruding instrument in phallic-like shape stretching across the camper van. It was my zoom lens. Yes, it really was my zoom lens on my camera. You see, I had one of the cameras set up on the mounting point on the back of the headrest, a very expensive bit of kit for 60 quid that I bought. And so as he opened the door, he saw this, other cameras and microphones all laid out, and it was quite clear that I was doing some sort of video. Then, of course, my mind went to other matters. What sort of video did he think that I was doing? A, full stop, and B, that I would need a zoom lens for. Now, I have no idea what you're all thinking listening to this right now. I know what I was thinking at the time, and I hadn't done anything wrong. I was just sat there, soaking wet, trying to do a blasted video, and along comes the constable thinking I'm up to no good. I didn't tell him what I do for a living because I think that would have just made his day to a point that, well, when he went back to the tea room, "Sarge, you'll never guess what this vicar did." I'm sure he didn't talk like that. But you know what? In my mind, all policemen, including the two that I'm nearly related to now, they're all like they are on the bill. I'm sure they really are. So, Ivinghoe Beacon, notwithstanding, not getting arrested for not actually doing anything in the back of the camper van. I mean, if I had have done, I almost wouldn't have minded, but I wasn't. So the message for the week, I think, was never give up. Although with that last bit, maybe you should. Never give up, but maybe do a bit of re-evaluation, because sometimes the plan that you actually have maybe needs a bit of, well, tweaking. The plan that I had to do a video at Ivinghoe Beacon has not been given up as such, but it most certainly has been moved to the back burner. Maybe a little tiny bit of thinking required. So, that just about wraps it up for this episode. I do hope you've enjoyed it, and apologies once again for being a miserable Alan Rickman sort last week. The world really was against me, but now it's not. It's a good and happy place. This has been your host Alex on the Daily Pilgrim channel, coming to you from the cupboard under the stairs, and the oxygen is just about running out. It's been an interesting 20 minutes or so. Breathing has been challenging at times. However, it's now time, before I pass out, to say thank you for listening once again. Good night, and see you next week.